Welcome to Soltron. This is the video review for metal Cardbot Fleta Z. Here's how he scales with some other jets and blue cop. Alright, and here's his giant window box that he comes in, as well as a couple of shots of the robot himself. And then most notably, if you look at his proportions versus his box proportions, you can see that he's definitely pretty far off. His box proportions, he's just a lot more sleek and narrow. His head is more interesting. There's just a lot about the box art that looks really cool and interesting that just does not translate to this robot, especially the legs. I think the legs are where this guy really falls apart. But the head sculpt is very generic looking. And then, yeah, the shoulders just don't work correctly. I just really don't like this robot. Yeah, but I'll try not to bash it. But compared to this artwork, the artwork, I love this. He looks very, very cool and sleek. But his actual robot mode just does not look like that at all. And you're not going to get like a cool pose like this. And then as with the other robots, the instructions are just newsprint. All right, and here's a 360 view of this guy. And as I said, there's just all the elements of this guy look good individually, but just all put together, he just doesn't really flow correctly for me. The proportions just seem really off. He's very stumpy and broad, and that just doesn't really fit the kind of robot this guy is supposed to be. He's supposed to be like a graceful archer. And if we get a good look at his head sculpt, there is some style happening here, but this kind of just feels like an old robot aesthetic to me. This reminds me of like an 80s or 90s robot. It just doesn't really have that pop of like the other metal Cardbots. He just feels like he's missing something. And then his overall form just feels a little bit generic to me. Compared to Airhide, I think this is a very stylish take on this kind of robot, and it does like a lot of interesting things. This robot, I just feel like doesn't really do that. He's more like on par with this kind of robot who feels kind of generic, and he just like comes to do a job and he gets it done, but with like a little bit, not very much aesthetic flair. I kind of feel that way about Fleta Z. But anyway, I'll stop bashing the aesthetic. Obviously, I'm not super in love with this guy. I do kind of like the colors though. It's a very interesting take. It does make him look very different from the other Cardbots. But yeah, as far as articulation goes, he does have a ball joint neck. It only ball joints down, unfortunately. He can't get an up because he has like this neck collar in the back that gets in the way. So that was kind of an unfortunate choice, especially for a flying robot. He does have, I guess I should go over his accessories. So he's got like this sword kind of weapon, and then he's got his actual card weapon, which is this cool looking bow, and it has a very cool, this reminds me of one of the Brave series, like the logo for that. And then his sword can peg into this bow, so he can get like this giant arrow, which looks pretty devastating. But with his posing, you're not really going to get like a good drawing his bow. You can kind of get it, but he can't really reach around his chest at all. He's got like a very massive, very wide chest. You can kind of get it sort of close. I think that's probably as good as you're going to get. And then on the box art, you see he's doing like this cool like flying pose with his knees bent, but he's only got 90 degrees in the knees, so you're not really going to get his knee like flared out like that. So this, and then you do have a waist joint, but that's also hampered. So you can get like this kind of drawing and flying pose. This is like as close as I can get him to the box art. So he's kind of like flying and shooting down, I guess. And then compared to the box art, it's just, yeah, not so much. It just doesn't really work. I guess his whole body is kind of turned this way. Maybe sort of like this, and then turning and looking this way. No. Nope. So yeah, his articulation leaves something to be demanded. But anyway, we'll go over that in a second. Let's go ahead and look at his accessories and get a closer look. So this just pegs into his hand using this handle here, and it's pretty stumpy. Like it's very close to the bow itself. And you can see his fingers are very flat. So probably I wouldn't be surprised if other Cardbots can't even hold this because they have bigger fists. But again, very cool looking bow. I do like this accessory. It does add some character to this figure. And then you're just going to fold everything up, and then this part is just going to unclip. And then there you have his card mode. And then here's his metal card with a really cool looking pose. And it's a interesting looking black card. So you're just going to peg that on. And then you have his metal card. And then the sword weapon itself can also like fold up, and this is going to be for his transformation. And then these orange bits of plastic I think really hurt his look too. Like why this color? It's just so glaring, like in his elbows, his knees, his sword. Okay, so as we said, for his articulation, he's got ball joint neck. He's got weird shoulders. Like it might have helped if these could actually fold backwards a little bit to give him some more articulation. He's also got these, which are like air cannons, I guess. So that's kind of a cool thing that those can articulate. So he's got these to get the outward motion on his shoulder. You got these ratchets, which are very nice. And then he's got a backward motion on his arms so he can put his arms behind him, which is very nice. They didn't have to include that. So he does have technically like a bicep swivel because of this. So that's a nice addition that they don't usually do. And then he's got pretty much 180 on the elbows. So great elbow articulation. And then if that wasn't enough, he's also got a nice forearm rotation, which will give him like wrist articulation. So he's got pretty fully loaded shoulders. They're just a little bit awkward to work with. You just have to know what the limitations are, but you can get pretty much any kind of posing out of these shoulders. And then these will fold up to get some more outward motion. And then these can fold all the way down as well, or somewhat down, like this far down. So you can kind of get him like crossing his arms or something, I guess. And then for his waist, you got this hip skirt, which is going to get in the way. So you can't actually articulate his waist with that down. You have to transform him a bit by rotating this, and that will get his skirt out of the way so you can rotate this, and his side skirts won't run into it. So you can get the waist articulation, it's just not built in. You do have to rotate this out of the way. So that's kind of an odd choice. And then you do have these hip skirts that get out of the way, so you get full side kick as usual, 90-degree frontward kick, 90-degree back kick, and then you get 90-degree knees, but the knees are kind of in the wrong spot, so they're not looking very good when they're bent up. And then nothing, well, you get like toe for transformation, but nothing really in the feet. You also do have thigh swivel. So this guy has like all the articulation. It's just, none of it feels correct. It just doesn't work with him for some reason. Even though he's got so much articulation, he just cannot pull off interesting poses. All the articulation like comes at some kind of cost, like his knees in the wrong place. His hips can't rotate without mistransforming him. His shoulders are just kind of weird. They're just like all over the place. So yeah, I don't know. Just everything kind of gets in the way on this guy. And then compared to the box art, I think they really messed up by making his legs so short. They could have easily trimmed this skirt and given this plastic to the bottom of his feet and just made him a lot taller and more graceful looking. And then his shoulders are so wide, which also makes him look less graceful. But I could see how people would like this design. It's just not working for me. And then to transform him, we're just going to fold up his landing gear. We're going to rotate this up, cover his head, and then his shoulders are just going to rotate. Well, we'll save that for later. Actually, we'll go ahead and work on his legs. His legs do like an interesting trick where they rotate around like this, which is kind of nice. It's a little bit different than your typical Combiner Wars jet transformer who just has like collapsing legs. And then you can see his feet end up on the top of the jet. You're just going to fold those down. And then you can see the tail fins are all these bits here. So you're just going to sandwich his legs together. And then it's got like this cool like cargo bay area in the back, which were like the back of his knees earlier. So that's a cool little feature, this little hatch. And then you're just going to fold up his skirts. And then you just rotate his arms, his arm wings into place here. And then you can definitely tell what's going to go on with his fist. We're just going to open up these flaps, and you can just rotate his fist around like air hide. You got his turbines. So that's pretty good. And then you're just going to use his backwards rotation on his shoulder and then just peg this into place forward. And that's basically his jet mode. And you can see he's got kind of some internal cargo space. You could probably fit like a really small robot in there. Not his card though, it's too big. And then you're going to clip his sword to this hatch, and then this whole thing will just close up and become his back. And then you get this very glaring orange post, which should not be there. Like they should have definitely made these joints black. It's just not a good look. But yeah, then you get this robot mode, which looks, of course, like a anthropomorphic eagle or falcon or something. You got kind of a hooked beak kind of look. But yeah, he's very cute. So he's got gigantic eyes that always look like they're looking at you, which is a cool effect. Like no matter which way you turn him, he looks like he's glaring at you. I guess unless you get behind him. But yeah, he's an okay jet. The jet is just like a real disappointment. It's really thick and chunky. It doesn't really look cool at all. It's just very cute. And the black and gold like make him look very regal and dignified, and just the jet does not. And then these wings don't actually sit flat. They have to be up like this. It just doesn't look right. I guess he looks... Yeah, it's not cool. Let's just leave it at that. All right, and here he is in his vehicle mode with all the other jet robots I have pretty much. So you can see his wingspan is a lot smaller, and I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, this guy's, I don't know, he's nothing special to me, but if you're really into this aesthetic, I could definitely see how you'd want to get this figure. But for me, he's just kind of disappointing. He's just not as much as I thought he was going to be. All right, and the whole reason I got this figure is actually so he could become a wing pack for like other figures, just like I made these two. So I'll show you like the custom I did with these two. All right, and here those robots are combined with these guys to become their backpacks, to become their jet packs pretty much. So yeah, I think that works exceedingly well. I really like this look. So that's actually what I was trying to do with this guy. But he's just too chunky. His aesthetic doesn't work. Like it kind of works, but then you got this huge chunk hanging off his back and it just doesn't work. So even if you put these on the legs, it just wouldn't. It just, unfortunately, he just can't be used as a jetpack. His wings are too small. He's too chunky. If he was nice and, if he was like skinnier and more slender, this would have a lot of potential, but unfortunately, he just doesn't work for my custom purposes, so I'm just kind of disappointed with this guy. So anyway, that's the review for this guy, and I'll see you in the next one.